What if someone told you that your mind is like an iceberg, with only a small part visible and a vast hidden world beneath the surface? Welcome back to Psyche Unveiled. That's not just poetry. That was Sigmund Freud's revolutionary insight, one that forever changed how we understand human behavior, dreams, emotions, and even love. Freud didn't just invent psychoanalysis. He gave us a map of the unconscious mind, a guide to what really drives us, shapes us, and sometimes sabotages us. Today, more than a century later, we still hear his ideas everywhere. In therapy sessions, films, pop culture, and even in everyday conversation. But who was Freud, really? And why does a man born in the 1800s still shape modern therapy today? Let's journey through Freud's world, and perhaps through our own minds. Vienna, 1890s. Psychiatry was in its infancy. Mental illness was misunderstood, often dismissed as weakness or madness. But Freud, a curious neurologist, saw something different. He noticed that many of his patients, mostly women of the time, came in with strange physical symptoms: paralysis, blindness, fainting spells, yet no medical cause. Their bodies were speaking what their minds could not. Freud began to wonder, could emotional pain become physical? Could repressed memories shape our behavior without us knowing it? This question changed everything, and from it, psychoanalysis was born, a new kind of therapy that sought to heal not just the body, but the hidden mind. Freud proposed something radical, that our conscious mind, what we're aware of, is only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lies the unconscious mind, a vast ocean of thoughts, desires, fears, and memories that silently influence everything we do. The unconscious, he said, is where we bury uncomfortable truths, things we're ashamed of, afraid of, or not ready to face. But buried things don't stay quiet forever. They find ways to resurface through dreams, slips of the tongue, anxieties, or strange behaviors. That's why we call it a Freudian slip when we accidentally say what we truly think. It's the unconscious peeking through the cracks. Freud believed that if we could make the unconscious conscious, we could heal, and that became the mission of psychoanalysis. To listen deeply, uncover what's hidden, and bring it into the light. To explain the mind's structure, Freud introduced one of his most famous models: the id, the ego, and the superego, the three parts of our psyche constantly interacting within us. The id is primal. It wants pleasure, instantly. It doesn't care about rules or morals. It just says, I want. Think of a hungry baby crying in the night, or an adult craving revenge, attention, or escape. That's the id. The superego is the opposite. It's the voice of conscience, our learned sense of right and wrong. It judges, it criticizes, it sets impossible standards. And in between them stands the ego, the mediator, trying to balance the wild desires of the id with the rigid demands of the superego, all while surviving reality. Freud saw every human being as a battleground between these forces. Too much id, and life becomes chaos. Too much superego, and it becomes guilt and repression. Balance them, and we find mental health. Even in modern therapy, this model still whispers through our understanding of inner conflict. When we say we feel torn, that's Freud's map in motion. Now let's explore what Freud thought about dreams. He called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. He believed that while we sleep, our defenses relax, and our hidden desires sneak into awareness, disguised as symbols. A locked door might represent fear. A journey could symbolize change. The meaning wasn't in the literal image, but in the emotional truth behind it. Freud's dream interpretation gave us a new way to listen to ourselves. Instead of dismissing dreams as nonsense, he treated them as coded messages from the psyche, little letters from the unconscious, waiting to be read. Even today, therapists who don't call themselves Freudian still ask, what does that dream mean to you? That's his legacy, teaching us to look inward with curiosity rather than judgment. Freud noticed that people often defend themselves from uncomfortable truths through subtle tricks of the mind, what he called defense mechanisms. You might deny what's too painful to face. You might project your feelings onto someone else, blaming them for what you can't admit in yourself. Or you might rationalize, explaining away behavior that deep down you know comes from emotion, not reason. These mechanisms aren't bad, they're protective. They help us survive emotional pain, but if we overuse them, they keep us from growing. Modern therapy still uses these Freudian ideas, helping people recognize when they're defending rather than healing. Freud's most famous patient, known as Anna O, described their work together as the talking cure. By talking freely without censorship, she began to uncover memories and feelings buried for years, and with each insight came relief. Symptoms faded, clarity returned. Freud realized that when someone feels safe enough to speak the unspeakable, healing begins. That's the foundation of talk therapy, the kind that fills countless counseling rooms around the world today. The simple idea that words can heal was revolutionary. Today, whether it's psychoanalysis, psychodynamic therapy, or even CBT, the root is the same: creating space for the mind to understand itself. Of course, Freud wasn't perfect. Some of his theories, like the Oedipus complex or his heavy focus on sexuality, sparked outrage and criticism, even among his followers. He was bold, sometimes stubborn, and deeply human. But behind his controversial ideas was a man trying to make sense of human suffering. He lived through war, exile, and illness. He saw firsthand the fragility of the mind. His courage was in asking the questions most people avoided. Why do we repeat pain? Why do we desire what harms us? Why are we so afraid of our own emotions? He wasn't just studying others. He was studying himself. Many modern psychologists may say, "I'm not Freudian," but look closer, and you'll see Freud's fingerprints everywhere. The idea that childhood shapes adulthood? Freud. The use of free association, letting clients speak freely? Freud. The recognition that emotions drive behavior? Freud. Even talk therapy itself, that a therapist listens, not prescribes, came from Freud's couch in Vienna. Therapies like psychodynamic therapy, humanistic therapy, and even mindfulness approaches echo his core insight, that what's unconscious seeks expression, and what's unspoken seeks words. When you sit in a therapist's office today, you're sitting in Freud's shadow, in the very space he imagined, a safe room where truth can surface without fear. So why does Freud still matter? Because he gave us permission to look inward. Before him, the mind was a mystery. After him, it became a landscape, one we could explore, understand, and even heal. Freud didn't just describe human behavior. He described the human condition. We repress, we desire, we contradict ourselves. And in those contradictions lies our story. Modern therapy, neuroscience, and trauma research have refined his ideas, sometimes challenging them, often expanding them. But they all owe him a debt. He made the invisible visible. He taught us that symptoms have meaning, that pain has history, and that healing begins with understanding. Freud's work might feel like it belongs to dusty libraries or university classrooms, but in truth, it lives quietly inside each of us. Every time you wonder, why do I keep doing this? Or why do I react this way? You're asking Freud's questions. His map of the mind, the id, ego, and superego, still guides the everyday choices we make. The id wants pleasure and ease. The superego insists on rules, image, and perfection. And the ego stands in the middle, trying to make peace between desire and duty. We feel this battle every day, in our habits, our relationships, our inner voice. Freud would say that much of what drives us lies hidden beneath awareness. Emotions we've buried, wounds we never named, impulses we've learned to deny. But repression doesn't erase them. It only makes them act out in subtler ways, in irritation, self-sabotage, or even our dreams. That's why Freud valued introspection, the courage to look inward without judgment. When we pause and ask, what part of me is speaking right now, we begin to notice the unconscious forces shaping us. Awareness is the first step toward integration. Dreams for Freud were the royal road to the unconscious. They translate our hidden emotions into stories and symbols. Instead of dismissing them, we can ask, what feeling was trying to find a voice? Often it's not about the dream itself, but what it's trying to tell us emotionally. In relationships, Freud's lens helps us see how we project, how we place our inner conflicts onto others. We might criticize traits in someone else that we secretly struggle with in ourselves. When we recognize this, relationships become mirrors, not battlegrounds. Freud also taught that talking heals. Putting feelings into words, whether in therapy, journaling, or conversation, brings clarity. When the unconscious is spoken, it loses its power to control us in silence. So applying Freud's lessons today isn't about overanalyzing every dream or thought. It's about curiosity. It's about learning to listen inwardly, to treat the psyche not as a puzzle to solve, but a conversation to have. When we do that, we live with more awareness, compassion, and freedom. The very things Freud hoped his work would bring to humanity. Freud once said, "Being entirely honest with oneself is a good exercise." And maybe that's the heart of his legacy. He showed us that self-awareness is not just therapy, it's liberation. That the unconscious isn't a dark place to fear, but a part of ourselves asking for light. So as we continue to explore new therapies, new sciences, new ways of healing, Freud's whisper remains. Look within. Your answers are already there. If this journey through the mind spoke to you, remember, the story of Freud is not just about psychology. It's about what it means to be human, conflicted, curious, and endlessly searching for meaning. Because in the end, to understand Freud is to understand a little more of ourselves. Thank you for watching Psyche Unveiled. If this journey into Freud's ideas and principles resonated with you, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video. We'll see you in the next video.